The 80s gave us a movie that predicted artificial intelligence would replace actors 40 years before it started happening, and that's just one of 20 films the 80s Hollywood completely buried. Walter Hill made this in 1987 with Nick Nolte and Powers Booth. It's basically The Dirty Dozen updated for the Reagan era. Instead of war heroes, it's about decorated vets who got abandoned by the government and declared dead, and they've become mercenaries working for a drug kingpin. The movie came out and bombed. Nobody went to see it, which is insane because Hill was coming off 48 Hours and Streets of Fire, and Nolte was a huge star at that point. Part of the problem was the marketing had no idea what to do with it. It's a Western, but it's set in modern-day Texas and Mexico. It's an action movie, but it's also this slow-burn character piece. The studio didn't know how to sell it, so they just didn't really try. And it disappeared. Made no money, got forgotten almost immediately. Hill moved on to other projects. Nolte was already shooting something else, and for years you couldn't even rent Extreme Prejudice because nobody wanted the home video rights. Alligator was supposed to be a cheap Jaws knockoff. Giant alligator eats people, easy money. Except they got John Sayles to write the screenplay, and Sayles doesn't do cheap. He turned it into a police procedural where the main character is a cop whose partner died and the press is destroying him over it. They're writing articles questioning if he reacted fast enough, if he's competent, all this stuff. And meanwhile, there's actually a car-sized alligator busting through concrete and eating people. But the media cares more about tearing this guy down than dealing with the real crisis. The movie cost basically nothing to make. Louis Teague directed it as one of his first features. And when it came out in 1980, it made a little bit of money, but nobody took it seriously. Critics dismissed it as a B-movie creature feature. So Alligator got written off as just another cheap horror movie and disappeared. Just One of the Guys is an 80s sex comedy. It's about a high school girl who thinks she got passed over for a journalism internship because of sexism, so she disguises herself as a guy at a different school to prove her point and do some undercover reporting, which sounds like it's going to be completely unwatchable by today's standards. It came out in 1985, made about $11 million, and vanished. Critics barely reviewed it. It was just another teen comedy in a decade that had hundreds of them. The only reason people remember it at all is because it pushed the PG-13 rating way further than it should have, and a generation of boys saw things they probably shouldn't have seen in a PG-13 movie. Parents complained, there were some articles about it, and then everyone forgot about it again. Joyce Heiser, who starred in it, basically never got another big role. The director Lisa Gottlieb made a couple TV movies and that was it. The whole thing just faded away like it never existed. Ross McElwee got funding to make a documentary about General Sherman's march through the South during the Civil War. You know, the one where he burned everything to show the Confederacy they shouldn't rise again. Except McElwee was going through a terrible breakup at the time and having a complete breakdown. So instead of making the documentary he was supposed to make, he grabbed his camera and went on a road trip to track down all his ex-girlfriends and interview them about why they dumped him. This sounds like it should be unwatchable. Some guy crying about his breakups while pretending to make a history documentary. But the movie's funny and sad and surprisingly tender. McElwee basically invented vlogging in 1986 by accident. Dario Argento made Suspiria, one of the most beautiful horror movies ever. Then in 1987 he made Opera, and he decided to do the most disgusting thing you can do in a horror film, mess with eyeballs. A singer named Betty is about to perform in Phantom of the Opera in Rome, but there's a stalker who's obsessed with her, and every time someone gets close to her he kills them in horrible ways. And he forces Betty to watch by tying her up with needles placed under her eyelids. If she closes her eyes, they'll be shredded. So she has to watch everything, but she also can't see the killer clearly. It's disgusting and gorgeous and completely over the top. If you're squeamish about eye stuff, this movie will destroy you. Joyce Carol Oates wrote a short story about a young girl and a creepy older guy named Arnold Friend who might be a serial killer. When they adapted it into Smooth Talk, people were upset because the movie toned down the serial killer angle. But Oates herself loved what they did. The screenwriter and director chose to focus on the girl, Connie, played by Laura Dern when she was 15, and her relationships with her friends, her sister, her mom. Not the monster. Arnold shows up at a mall first, trying to talk to young girls who are trying to get the attention of older boys. Then he shows up at Connie's house when her parents and sister are gone, and Connie realizes very quickly she's in over her head. But the key thing is the movie never becomes about him. It stays focused on Connie and her mom. Friend is menacing and creepy and wrong, but he's not the center of the story. That's what made people mad, but that's also what makes it work. In 1983, Austria made a movie about a serial killer. Guy gets out of prison and immediately invades a home to murder everyone inside. It's based on an actual killing spree that happened there. The filmmakers strapped cameras directly to the actor's body, had them swinging on ropes through the house, positioned them in ways that put you right inside this psycho's perspective. And it's not cheap horror movie stuff. The cinematography is genuinely brilliant. Everything about how it's made is top-level filmmaking, and that craft is being used to show you something absolutely horrific. Most serial killer films spend all this time explaining the killer. Here's his childhood trauma, here's why he's like this, now you understand him. Angst says "F that." You get some narration from actual court testimony and that's it. The rest is just watching this happen. If you've seen Portrait of a Serial Killer or Funny Games and you could stomach those, Angst is right there with them. Except this came out in 1983, way before audiences were ready for something this disturbing. Bob Fosse made Cabaret, made all that jazz, incredible filmmaker. His last movie was Star 80, about the murder of Dorothy Stratton. If you don't know that story, Dorothy Stratton was Playmate of the Year. She was young and beautiful, about to become huge. She got discovered by a small-time hustler who sent her photos to Playboy, married her, and then when she was leaving him for someone else, he killed her. Bob Fosse cast Eric Roberts as the killer and just let him be genuinely frightening. There's no sympathy, no backstory explaining how his childhood made him this way. Roberts just plays this creep who thinks he owns Dorothy because he discovered her. And of course, nobody wanted to watch it with how ugly and honest it was. Every nuclear war movie in the 80s looked the same. Show the explosion, show the rubble, show desperate people fighting through destroyed cities. Testament doesn't do any of that, and yet it's probably the most emotionally devastating nuclear war film ever made. The nuclear attack happens somewhere else. You just see a flash of light in the distance. Then you watch a suburban family in California try to keep living their normal life while radiation slowly kills their entire town. Director Lynn Lippman figured something out. Watching a mother and her kids put on school plays and sell batteries to fleeing neighbors while they're all dying is harder to watch than any explosion. Bodies start piling up in their small town. First they bury people. Then there's too many bodies, so they burn them. And through all of it, this family just keeps trying to make each day matter, knowing they're all on borrowed time. Watching these children slowly get sick while trying to stay children is unbearable. The film doesn't show you graphic stuff, it doesn't need to. Just watching normal people wait to die while trying to love each other is enough. Jean Rollin made horror movies in France that nobody in America heard about, except maybe Tarantino, who's a huge fan apparently. The Night of the Hunted opens with a woman in a hospital gown running down a road trying to flag down a car. She's being chased by someone she can't remember. A guy picks her up, takes her back to his place, and then you find out she escaped from some building where everyone inside is collectively losing their minds. They're having sex with each other, killing themselves. The woman has amnesia and can't remember anything. Some shadowy doctors show up and take her back to the building. The guy who picked her up decides he's going to save her. Rollin made a whole bunch of movies, and this isn't his best one, but the plot actually makes sense compared to his other stuff. It just got buried, because French horror from 1980 wasn't exactly something American theaters were promoting. Sidney Lumet made Serpico in the 70s, which is about a cop who exposes corruption in the NYPD. People loved it, considered it one of the best films of the decade, but he felt guilty afterwards because he'd made all the cops who opposed Serpico look one-dimensional and evil. So he made another movie about a whistleblower cop. This time, he wanted to show it differently. Prince of the City stars Treat Williams as a narcotics detective who's loyal to his partners. That loyalty eventually crosses a line where he's scoring heroin for his informants, so they'll keep giving him tips on suppliers. Federal investigators start calling him. He returns their calls because the guilt's eating at him. And what follows is a 3-hour movie with over 70 speaking parts that's mostly about the litigation process. Because the agents who initially work with him all get promoted off the case. They got their career boost from starting the investigation, and then they're gone. He's stuck with new investigators, new district attorneys, everyone trying to use his case to climb the ladder. Michael Crichton wrote and directed a movie about how advertising companies would use artificial intelligence to replace actors. Not just some CGI, actual AI that would make human performers obsolete. Albert Finney plays a plastic surgeon who starts noticing something weird. Beautiful models keep coming to him with orders for extremely specific measurements. A centimeter here, a millimeter there, all paid for by the same advertising agency. A few days later, those models end up dead. Finney's character starts investigating and discovers the measurements weren't for beauty standards. They were for creating perfect digital replicas. The advertising agency was scanning these models, making digital versions of them with exact specifications, and then the real people became liabilities. The agency was building a system where actors would be completely replaceable. Film a person once, own their digital likeness forever. Use AI to make them say and do whatever you want in commercials. Looker should be mentioned in the same breath as they live. It predicted the AI replacement thing before anyone was seriously talking about it. This was 1981, 45 years ago, but nobody even remembers this movie anymore. Abel Ferrara made a revenge movie in 1981, except he wasn't trying to make the audience feel good about it. Most films in that genre follow the same pattern. Something horrible happens, then the victim gets their revenge, and somehow that's supposed to make everything okay. Ferrara looked at that formula and said no. The main character is a mute woman. She literally cannot call for help, and she gets assaulted twice in one day, once in an alley, once when she comes home and finds a burglar in her apartment. The first is Ferrara himself. He cast himself as the guy who attacks her and leaves her in a pile of garbage. After the second attack, she kills the burglar and takes his gun. Then she buys a nun costume to hide her face and starts shooting men. Catcallers, stalkers, anyone who harasses her on the street. After a while, she's not even being selective anymore, she's just killing. Same year, there was this horror movie that nobody remembers, even though it invented something that Predator made famous 6 years later. The Wolfen in the movie are some advanced species of wolves that can exchange souls with certain Native American tribes. They're living in an abandoned housing project in the Bronx that developers want to bulldoze to put up another corporate building. The director was Michael Wadley, who'd made the Woodstock documentary and then never made another narrative film after this. The cast was strange. Albert Finney, Gregory Hines, Edward James Olmos, all in a werewolf movie. Except they're not werewolves. The film introduced a technique called thermography, where the camera shows the predator's point of view. It's staying low to the ground, seeing victims as gradients of heat. Predator used the exact same approach later, and everyone remembers that one. Nobody remembers this movie did it first. Then 1982 gave us Liquid Sky, which is maybe the weirdest film here. It's a low-budget sci-fi movie about junky fashion models in New York, and aliens. The aliens are harvesting the endorphins that humans release during orgasm. Anne Carlisle plays two roles, a woman named Margaret and a man named Jimmy. She's beautiful as both. The film's about excess and drugs and sex with anyone of any gender, which is probably why nobody saw it. This was 1982, The mainstream wasn't ready for any of that. The acting's honestly not that great here because most of the cast had never been in a movie before, but it's got this energy that makes it work anyway. It's like Repo Man if Repo Man was about alien sex vampires. This one is a West German film about obsession. A teenage girl becomes obsessed with some emerging pop star who goes by the name R. Just the letter R. He barely talks in interviews, keeps everything mysterious, and this girl loses her mind over him. She harasses the mailman because R isn't writing her back. She skips school. She doesn't even talk to her family unless R's on TV. After a week of no letters, she hitchhikes to Munich to find him. Her parents don't even file a missing persons report because they don't want the scandal. The ending goes full horror movie, which might not work depending on who you ask. But the first half is this precise, uncomfortable portrait of isolation and teenage obsession, and nobody's ever heard of it. Gary Sherman made Vice Squad in 1982. It follows a single mother who works as a prostitute, and the cops force her to go undercover to help catch a pimp named Ramrod who's been killing people. Wings Hauser plays Ramrod, and his performance is genuinely disturbing, and the whole film plays like a nightmare tour of LA after dark. You're seeing every sleazy motel, every part of the city people pretend doesn't exist. It's like if Grand Theft Auto was a movie made 40 years before Grand Theft Auto existed. Hauser's performance is the best part here, though. It really gets under your skin. People who've seen this movie said he makes you want to shout at your TV even when you're watching alone. Vice Squad has this small cult following now, but most people have never even heard of it. The 80s buried it pretty quickly. 3 years later, Joan Freeman made a movie called Streetwalkin' that covers similar territory. Young woman runs away from home with her little brother. They're broke and desperate, and a pimp takes them in. At first, he seems thoughtful, gives them a place to stay, but she has to start working the streets to pay him back, and the moment she questions anything, he turns violent. Melissa Leo plays the lead, years before she won an Oscar. Dale Midkiff plays the pimp, and he's constantly trying to prove how tough he is because the other pimps in the movie see right through him. There's a group of prostitutes who stick together, and they're led by Julie Newmar. If you don't know that name, she played Catwoman in the 1960s Batman TV show. Now she's in her 50s, and she's walking Times Square in lingerie and running a crew of women trying to survive. The movie builds to this confrontation where the prostitutes fight back against the pimps. John Sayles started his career writing cheap horror scripts for Roger Corman. Then he became known for making working-class dramas about people getting screwed by the system. He even directed the music video for Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, and right in the middle of all that, in 1983, he made a high school romance called Baby It's You. It's set in a 1960s New Jersey high school. Rosanna Arquette plays Jill, who's preparing to go off to college. She gets involved with a guy who calls himself the Sheik. He's from the wrong side of the tracks, does this whole greaser routine, thinks he's Frank Sinatra reincarnated. Sounds like a familiar setup, right? Good girl falls for bad boy, they're from different worlds, you know how it goes. Except John Sayles doesn't end the movie at graduation. Most high school films end with prom or graduation, and everyone rides off into the sunset. Sayles keeps the camera rolling. She goes off to college and starts discovering who she is beyond that small town. He stays behind, and his life just gets worse. You watch these two people who genuinely care about each other drift further and further apart because they're heading in completely different directions now. These days, Baby It's You is mostly known as a trivia answer. It was Robert Downey Jr.'s first film. He's got maybe 2 minutes of screen time, but that's all anyone remembers about it. Ken Russell built his reputation making movies that were excessive and provocative. That was just who he was as a filmmaker. In 1984, he made Crimes of Passion, and it might be the most extreme thing he ever did. Kathleen Turner plays a woman living two completely separate lives. During the day, she's a fashion designer. At night, she works as a prostitute under the name China Blue. The movie's about men using her to act out fantasies they can't admit they have in their regular lives. Anthony Perkins plays a preacher who's so consumed with shame over his own desires that he's gone completely insane. He's snorting drugs, he's carrying around weapons, and he wants to kill China Blue because destroying her is the only way he can think to make his shame go away. The movie is explicit and extreme and absolutely not for everyone. Ken Russell pushed as far as he could with this one. A lot of people are going to hate it, but it's absolutely worth a watch at least once.